welcome to another episode of the Indie Author Mindset podcast. I am Adam Croft. It's quite a news-heavy episode this week, so we're going to crack on with it. I will warn you, judging by the news stories that are around in the industry this week, you'd be forgiven for thinking that there's something of a literary apocalypse upon us. But we'll carry on. The first news story I saw wasn't a BBC website, actually. This is something we've been talking about for a few weeks that's been rumoured was going to happen and has happened. Bertrams Books has collapsed with 450 jobs at risk, one of the biggest distributors of paperbacks in the UK. The book wholesaler, more than 450 employees set to lose their jobs after it collapsed into administration. The firm was founded, interestingly enough, in a chicken shed in 1968. Joint administrators Turpin Barker Armstrong said the majority of staff would be made redundant with immediate effect. So not good news for them. Kit Bertram, who set up the company with his mother, who then sold it in 1999, disputed the claims of the administrators over the reason for the collapse. He said it's nothing to do with ebooks or COVID-19. People still like to hold and smell books. And he's absolutely right. It's nothing to do with ebooks whatsoever, because ebooks have never replaced paperbacks. In fact, paperback sales have been going up as a result of the explosion in ebooks. And it's also nothing to do with COVID-19, because Bertrams Books have been in administration before, I believe. They've certainly been in a lot of trouble before over the last few years, so can't really blame the last 3 months for that. The issues, personally, from what I can see, have been that they've been too slow to update and to catch up with what's going on. Ebooks, not even a part of that. They've had antiquated systems running in the background, and to be quite honest, they've refused to work with very small and indie presses who are now dominant in the industry. They've buried their heads in the sand, like a lot of people have on that wing of the industry, thought that the big four, big five publishers would always be the ones in charge, and that even when things were very much not heading in that direction, still buried their heads in the sand and thought that it would go back that way. And of course it hasn't. So sad news for those 450 employees of Bertrams there, who have unfortunately been made redundant. Onto, I'm sorry, not much more impressive, enlightening, happy news at all. You might have seen, if you're on Twitter and you're in this industry over the past couple of weeks, the hashtag Publishing Paid Me, which was started by fantasy author L.L. McKinney. It called on white authors to share what they'd been paid by publishers in comparison to black authors, in light of the Black Lives Matter movement, of course, that's been moving across the world in the last few weeks. The white British author Matt Haig said it was seriously uncomfy, but he revealed that he had received £5,000 for his first book, which is about an average advance, but had steadily earned more since, securing £600,000 for his 10th book. Now, I love Matt Haig's books, but that's a lot of money. Mallory Blackman, the UK's former children's laureate and author of the Noughts and Crosses series, seriously big name author, wrote that she had never in her life received anything like the sums being posted by some white authors. This is Mallory Blackman. She's an enormous name, and she got nowhere near what white authors have been earning. She said, and this really stood out at me, because having had publishing contracts before, this is something I'd never seen. She said, my latest contracts contain NDA clauses, so I can't say what I earn. That's phenomenal. Not only are they being paid less, but they're being legally gagged from talking about it. She says, I can't say what I earn, but it's nowhere near what some white authors are getting. I make a living, but I've had to learn to cut my cloth to fit my income. This is Mallory Blackman. The white American science fiction author John Scalzi wrote that, to the best of his recollection, he had received $6,500 for his first two books in 2005 and 2006, and then several 5- and 6-figure advances before a, wait for it, $3.4 million deal for 13 books in 2015, which was £2.2 million at the time. In comparison, the Hugo Award-winning black science fiction novelist N.K. Jemisin revealed she had received £40,000 for each book of her Inheritance trilogy. $25,000, not pounds, for each book of the Dreamblood duology, and $25,000 for each book of the Broken Earth trilogy, each of which won a Hugo Award. Are you spotting a pattern yet, guys? I know I am. The black American literary novelist Jesmyn Ward revealed she wrote her second novel, Salvage the Bones, before securing an advance. It sold for around $20,000 once it was finished, and it later won the National Book Award. But even after that, her publishing company did not want to increase her advance. Her agent and her fought before they finally wrestled their way to an increase to $100,000 with a different publisher, which also later won the National Book Award. She said, while that new sale was a healthy increase on the old deal, it was still barely equal to some of my writer friends' debut novel advances. Mallory Blackman, over the last week or two, as the hashtag has been widely shared, has urged would-be authors and illustrators to persist, despite the stories emerging. She says, your voice, your work, your stories matter. The situation will improve. It has to. Yes, it's off-putting, and yes, it's dispiriting, but please don't stop writing. We might not win at this game, but to not play is to definitely lose. I think there's a message for us all in that, without a doubt. Far too many messages for us all in there, actually, quite honestly. Mark Coker has been talking about his post-pandemic world as he sees it for indie authors on the Smashwords blog. Some of the takeaways there are that he sees physical store sales decreasing. I mean, yeah, people can't get into physical stores. More books being written because more people are at home. More people are thinking, what do I want to do with my life? Do I want to finally get that book written? So those things are things that are already happening. But he sees the coronavirus pandemic going on for a lot longer because, astonishingly, a recent survey showed that 30% of Americans won't take a free COVID-19 vaccine. A third of the most heavily affected country on earth won't take a free COVID-19 vaccine. I'll leave that one there for you. The UK and US economies are going to be hit hard because of their poor COVID-19 responses. I think we're already seeing that. Both countries have been absolutely decimated economically by the fact they've done literally nothing to stop COVID-19. The back end of 2020 is looking like it's going to be a bad time to be heavily Amazon dependent because of it. You really don't want to be putting all your eggs in the UK and the US, to be honest with you. So, of course, it again leads me to say you should be looking at going wide and not just focusing on Amazon, not just focusing on the US and the UK. At this point, I should probably mention that by listening to the podcast, you get 40% off of any of my courses, including the Sell More Books Wide course. If you want to head over to courses.indieauthormindset.com, enter the promo code podcast, and you get 40% off of there, and I'll let you know how you can sell more books wide and reduce your dependence on Amazon, reduce your dependence on the US and the UK, which might be smart at the moment. James Daunt. Interesting name. He's the CEO of the UK's Waterstones and USA's Barnes & Noble bookstores. Mark Williams wrote an article about him in the New Publishing Standard this week. James Daunt has come out and said, we sell an awful lot of ebooks in the US. This is after having said that ebooks would never become big. But yes, he is the CEO of Barnes & Noble in the US, and compared to the fact that they're not selling any paperbacks and hardbacks at the moment, then yes, they probably are selling a lot of ebooks. He spoke to the bookseller and said things have turned around for Nook. The perception that I'm anti-ebooks is wrong. I'm very in favour of them if I can sell them. There we are. I'll give you a second to take that one apart. And I've not been able to do that in the UK. one of the things where I differ from my immediate predecessor at Barnes & Noble is that I considered the ability to sell ebooks to be a great strength, and the company had stopped investing in Nook. That will change. We will make Nook very much part of what we do in the US. Brilliant news. Glad to hear it. Must say, he doesn't actually have any choice in the matter, because Barnes & Noble's physical arm is, as we've reported in recent weeks, in serious trouble over there in the States. So yeah, he doesn't really have a whole lot of choice. It does feel like the literary equivalent of that character in the film who's about to die and whose only hope is the guy he's been a dick to for the last 2 hours. James Dolan is starting to sound a bit like that. But yeah, he's got a bit of history when it comes to ebooks. He took over Waterstone's operation in the UK a few years ago, which had a small, growing ebook arm. It didn't perform very well because, and Mark Williams takes him apart in this article here in a New Publishing Standard, he says even though you sold e-readers in stores, most of Waterstone's staff did not even know Waterstone's had its own ebook store. He said at the time, Mark Williams was a Waterstone's ebooks chart topper, and he was told by staff when he went in to talk about it, "You must be mistaken, sir. Waterstone's doesn't have an ebook store. We only sell the devices," despite him being top of that store at the time. Then James Daunt came along, and instead of investing in Waterstone's ebook store, he switched it off, and he invited Amazon, of all people, to sell the Kindle devices there in the Waterstone store, on its own plinth amid the bookshelves in Waterstones. And the few readers who had discovered Waterstones had an ebook store would then find they couldn't read their ebooks on the devices they'd bought in Waterstones, so they went out and shopped in the Kindle store, of course, and probably bought a lot of print books from Amazon while they were there, Mark Williams says. So he continues, "Let's be clear, you may possibly, just possibly, not have been as anti-ebooks as some believe. And of course everyone is entitled to change their mind, as you did when you went from calling self-published titles unutterable dross to saying, I've been converted to the virtues of self-publishing a long time ago." Isn't it incredible how often that man changes his mind when he realises he was wrong? So yeah, it's all very interesting stuff. That's the news. Enlightening. Put a smile on your face, haven't I, this morning? I'm pleased about that. CreativeIndie.com have carried an article about using advanced reader copies, because there's been a lot of talk about this. Should you invite people to leave reviews on your books? Should you give them free copies and say, I'd like an honest review in return? There's a lot of talk about this. There always has been, to be honest with you. But essentially, this article in CreativeIndie.com sums it up. Says ARC copies aren't illegal. Even if you're in Kindle Unlimited, you're allowed to give copies away to reviewers. Amazon has made it harder for those reviewers to actually post reviews if they didn't buy or get the book directly from Amazon, which is why we usually launch with a free day so reviewers can download before posting a review. We already know that Amazon may remove or block reviews from anyone they think you know. That's why Amazon deletes book reviews, including social media or email contacts. The fact that Amazon has access to those is scary enough. But I don't think that's a reason, they say, for authors to give up hope or say, screw it, why even build a platform? Many authors are so terrified of Amazon, and there's such a blame culture of reporting other authors who don't follow the rules, that they've decided all advanced reader copies are illegal or immoral. Amazon say directly, you may provide free or discounted copies of your books to readers. However, you may not demand a review in exchange or attempt to influence the review. Offering anything other than a free or discounted copy of the book, including gift cards, will invalidate a review and will have to remove it. My take on this is, and yeah, if you're a long-term listener to the Indie Author podcast or a long-term follower of mine, you'll be well aware of what I'm about to say. Don't worry about reviews. They don't drive sales nearly as much as other things. Worry about your covers, worry about your blurbs, worry about the quality of the books. Get those things sorted first. Reviews don't matter. They don't drive sales. Focus on building those sales. Focus on building your brand, and the reviews will follow. You're putting the cart before the horse. And that goes for rankings as well. Rankings do not drive sales. Sales drive rankings, but it's irrelevant because rankings don't matter, and the only people who look at them are other authors. So forget the two R's, ranking and reviews. Forget them. There's a special place, in fact, for those two R's. It's called the R's-hole. I'll see you next week. This episode of the Indie Author Mindset Podcast was presented by me, Adam Croft. The Indie Author Mindset Podcast is sponsored by Ingram Spark, helping you get your book into over 40,000 bookstores and libraries worldwide. Get started today at ingramspark.com. The theme music for this podcast is by the Caesareans. Don't forget you can claim 50% off any Indie Author Mindset course by entering the promo code podcast at the checkout. Links are in the show notes. For more great tips and guidance, join the Indie Author Mindset group on Facebook.